I don't see why hell would be cramped, but I guess if it's everything that's miserable, it would be, right? Everything except for fire. Ha ha. There is no fire down there except the feeble beams of Davy lamps and electric torches which scarcely penetrate the clouds of coal dust. Now, he's talking about traveling to the coal face. When you have finally got there into the coal mine, you crawl through the last line of pit props and see opposite you a shiny black wall 3 or 4 feet high. This is the coal face. Overhead is the smooth ceiling made by the rock from which the coal has been cut. Underneath is the rock again, so that the gallery you are in is only as high as the ledge of coal itself, what we call a seam of coal. Probably not much more than a yard high. So it's the floor to ceiling is about 3 feet or so. They don't take the rock, they only take the coal right out of the middle. So, turns out, short people are in a bit of an advantage in this. Now, the guys who shovel the loose coal onto the conveyor belt are called fillers. Quote, "It is impossible to watch the fillers at work without feeling a pang of envy for their toughness. It's a dreadful job that they do, an almost superhuman job by the standard of an ordinary person. For they are not only shifting monstrous quantities of coal, they are also doing it in a position that doubles or trebles the work. They have got to remain kneeling all the while. They could hardly rise from their knees without hitting the ceiling. And you can easily see by trying it what a tremendous effort this means. Shoveling is comparatively easy when you're standing up, but because you use your knee and thigh to drive the shovel along. Kneeling down, the whole of the strain is thrown upon your arm and belly muscles, and other conditions do not exactly make things easier. There is the heat. It varies, but in some mines it is suffocating, and the coal dust that stuffs up your throat and nostrils and collects along your eyelids, and the unending rattle of the conveyor belt, which sounds like a machine gun. But the fillers look and work as though they were made of iron. Most of them are small. Big men are at a disadvantage in that job. But nearly all of them have the most noble bodies, wide shoulders tapering to slender, supple waists, and small pronounced buttocks and sinewy thighs, with not an ounce of waist flesh anywhere. Now, I don't know anything about Orwell's biography really, but he's going on just a bit there, and it almost sounds homoerotic. A pronounced buttocks, sinewy thighs, supple waist. In the hotter mines, they wear only a pair of thin drawers, clogs, and knee pads. In the hottest mines of all, only the clogs and knee pads. You can hardly tell by the look of them whether they are young or old. It goes on a bit about their appearance, and it talks about how he talks about how you have to walk when the ceiling's 3 feet tall. You have to stoop over. He says at the start, to walk stooping is rather a joke. Try stooping over and walking under 3 feet, staying going. He says at first it's a joke. It's funny. It's humorous. It's like, this is embarrassing. It's awkward. It's silly. But it is a joke that soon wears off. It doesn't remain funny for long. Now he says, you come to a low stretch where you actually have to get down on your hands and knees. And he says this is actually a relief after the squatting business. But when you come to the end of the beams and try to get up again, you find that your knees have temporarily struck work and refuse to lift you. You call a halt ignominiously and say that you would like to rest for a minute or two. And then you rest, and finally you go on. Having got there, you have to sprawl in the coal dust and get your strength back for several minutes before you can even watch the work in progress. So I imagine George Orwell, he actually went down, he said, I imagine him laying in the coal dust going, oh my God, that was a journey. Now, we skip back a page to where he says we were going along and he kept seeing mice. Sometimes you see mice darting away from the beam of the lamps. They are surprisingly common, especially in mines where there are or have been horses. It'd be interesting to know how they got there in the first place, possibly by falling down the shaft. Now, this is an interesting bit. We didn't need to get this from Orwell, what we're about to get here, as Orwell, author of 1984 or whatever. But we did get it from Orwell. It's interesting. A mouse can fall any distance uninjured, owing to its surface area being so large relative to its weight. Now, some of you probably knew that from watching Bill Nye the Science Guy or whatever, but I didn't know that. Now, he says, coming back from the coal face is worse than going, not only because you're already tired, but because the journey back to the shaft is slightly uphill, which is just the particular mine he went in. You get through the low places at the speed of a tortoise, and you have no shame now about calling a halt when your knees give way. You try walking head down, as the miners do, and then you bang your backbone. Even the miners bang their backbones fairly often. This is the reason why, in very hot mines, it is necessary to go about half naked, where it is necessary to go about half naked. Most of the miners have what they call buttons down the back. That is, a permanent scab on each vertebrae. Not very romantic. For a week afterwards, your thighs are so stiff that coming downstairs is quite a difficult feat. You have to work your way down in a peculiar sidelong manner, without bending the knees. Your miner friends notice the stiffness of your walk and chaff you about it. Yet, even a miner who has been long away from work, from illness for example, when he gets back to the pit, he suffers badly for the first few days. Now, we can skip safely to the very last paragraph, where he says, all of us really owe the comparative decency of our lives to poor drudges underground, blackened to the eyes, with their throats full of coal dust, driving their shovels forward with arms and belly muscles of steel. Now, that's very last sentence is not true. We actually owe it to the people who invented the uses for coal, and who figured out the thermodynamics of steam engines and stuff. That's where the real power of our civilization comes from. Not from some guy with a shovel putting the coal on a conveyor belt, but the people who invented the steam engines that use that coal. So he is a socialist, as you probably know, George Orwell. He died a socialist, and he thought communism was a blight on the history of Marxism. But Marxism is a blight on the history of philosophy. So he was a socialist, but we'll excuse him for being funny as he was in that essay. There's a couple of other essays. There are a couple of other essays in this book that are worth some time, but they wouldn't go along with our theme of coal in this video. So, if you appreciate the work I do, I would appreciate a donation to my efforts. For every $10 donated, I upload a video. For $100 donated, I upload 20, and you can suggest or request what the subjects would be. You never can tell what kind of videos I'll produce on my own, like this one probably came out of the blue for some people. So I appreciate contributions if you appreciate the work that I do.